Afternoon. Here's a short video about Conquerors and Kings units, specifically casualties. Conquerors and Kings units are in a multiple of bases. All skirmish units have 2 bases. Other units have 3 bases. Now they die by the half base. So if this unit took a casualty, we'd take the full base off, put a half base back, that's just any old half base, and a dead marker. If they lost another casualty, I take that off and put a dead marker. That means units die in 6 increments. Skirmishers are very different than any other type of unit, but I'll talk about those in just a moment. The formation of units, they should always be laid out in a line, just for clarity. If you're using other basing systems, not the Peter Pig one, that's fine. It's the number of bases that matters. Now, Peter Pig bases, we tend to use the 3 by 3 centimetre, because it means if you've got spears, they're still safely on the base. It also means if they turn by 90 degrees, the footprint's the same. There's no expanding units or contracting units or odd things like that. Now, 3 figures is what you get for an auxiliary base. Skirmisher bases are 2 figures. Close order of 4. And elephants and chariots are singles. But there'll be future videos on those. Now, let's just focus on how skirmishers work in these games. Skirmishers are very different than other units. First of all, they only have 2 bases instead of the usual 3. That makes them more delicate. But here are the first differences. When a skirmisher dies, I take the base off, I put a half back, but there's no casualties because casualty markers affect the morale of the whole zone together. But skirmishers, they're almost expected to die. Therefore, when skirmishers die, the rest of the zone, their morale isn't affected. When the main troops start dying, that's a bit more serious. That means if there's some hits upon this zone, most players will put some of them on the skirmishers. The skirmishers will soak up hits without causing casualty markers. That's because historically the skirmisher's job is to absorb casualties and keep the main formation safe. That way, skirmishers are more sensitive, so if you keep putting on the skirmishers, you end up with no skirmishers, which is a real shame. So there's a balance between the 2 things. Skirmishers are generic type. They're just skirmishers. There's no differentiation between javelin armed, sling armed, bow, they're just skirmishers. They have one job to do. In Conquerors and Kings, units are very, very generic. There's no high detail of exactly what people have got. In the same way, the auxiliaries are just auxiliaries. You can pay to have a bow added to them, or armour, or veteran status, or save points by having no shield, etc. But the army list for all these specified units is free on the internet on the Peter Pig site. That's the army list for Conquerors and Kings. So, skirmishers have a very special purpose. That's to absorb casualties, keep the enemy at bay, but the loss of skirmishers doesn't cause a morale effect on this zone. If this zone was to take morale now, there'd be 2 casualties, and there are various other bits and pieces, but it's a very simple test. Anyway, that's how skirmishers work, and one final observation is that a zone fights all together. So where you put the figures in the zone doesn't matter, because that's not the general's job. For example, if these auxiliaries were here, if these slid across there and those slide there, it makes not a single bit of difference. It's not the general's job to position units exactly. It's his job to say, I want this zone here to attack. I want this zone here to go to their left. I want this zone here to hold on. He doesn't go around directing individual men. I like him to do that. Would you do that, please? How about you? Could you do a little bit? That's not the way it works. They operate as zones. And that's the first of Conquerors and Kings videos. Thank you.